I'll start for how most people get into it, and it's Vikings. That's the gateway. I keep on using this gateway drug term. But there's so many of these gateways, the introductions into things, and then the rabbit holes you fall down afterwards. I think that's spirituality in general, no matter where you get into. But most people get into it because of Vikings are cool. Vikings are popular. Vikings TV show looks cool. Northman's a cool movie. The music's really great. Like that's a huge thing. I think the music it really gets people in. Like the sound of the ancient North. Oh, it's so good. Still to this day, I love the music that comes from Norse themed bands. But typically, when you're talking about the Norse, you're talking about the mythology that comes from Scandinavia. So mainly Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. However, the majority of it was preserved in Iceland. And so this is where we get a lot of our source materials. Basically, almost all of our written materials come from Iceland during the Christian era. And so Iceland converted in around 1000 CE, and they kind of maintained the traditions in secret because they were so isolated. And so they had a pretty changed view on things for a while. And they still do. They're one of the first groups that reformed in the 1970s or so to form modern Asatru. And so, yeah, basically Viking Age is what a lot of people look at. It's where Norse mythology survives, is this kind of post-Viking Age era. And then once you start diving more into it, it really is something that extends so much further than the Viking Age. And that's something I'm really big on talking about, is when I say Norse, I'm not just talking about Vikings. I'm talking about the Iron Age, what came before the Viking Age. I'm talking about the Bronze Age and going all the way back to potentially, the Neolithic era. What led to Odin? How long has Odin been in existence as a deity? And where that date keeps getting pushed back further and further. Like recently they found, for the longest time, runes were thought to be around, 1500 years old or so. But recently that got pushed back as the oldest runic inscription now comes from about 2000 years ago. And so we're finding more and more that this time and this period that is Norse, this identity of the ancient North in Scandinavia, keeps going further back in time. So yeah, as far as like the mythology, it's really a cosmology is how I see it more. Is just how the ancient people of Scandinavia viewed the universe, and I think this is what still sticks with me the most today. Is they see it as Yggdrasil, this massive tree that holds all the worlds in its branches and its roots, and we're this realm in the center of it. That is, surrounded by mountains, and there's a snake in the sea that one of the gods fights, and there's a giant battle at the end of times, and you have the stories of Valhalla and the Einherjar and Fenrir and all these really epic tales, and I think it's a really beautiful mythology. I'm a little I'm jaded to it now, or numb to it now, because I've been a part of it for so long. But the first time you read Norse mythology, it's badass. It's just so cool sounding. And then when you get into the nuances, there are a lot of just really interesting stories. Like one of the more interesting ones is the Havamal, which is something that a lot of people get into with Norse mythology. Because supposedly the Havamal is the direct words of Odin giving advice to humanity. And so, it's mostly things like moderation. Don't drink too much. Don't, drinking's a memory stealing heron. Carry wisdom with you on the road. Be kind to your friends. And so you can either read the story as the literal words of Odin, or you can read it as a series of wisdom-giving, skalds or wise men or wanderers that all compiled their knowledge and shared it at different courts and different lands. And so, yeah, the term Norse encompasses a lot, but in general encompasses the spiritual traditions, or at least Norse mythology, Norse paganism, the spiritual traditions that come from ancient Scandinavia.